Welcome to the Remnant Podcast, a haven for Christian creatives and the flagship of the Remnant Podcast Network. And here's your host, Joshua Ling.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Remnant Podcast. I am your host, Joshua Ling. And after the first episode, I was almost at a loss of what to get into for a second time around, especially after going through the Zina Lahr stories like I did. I wanted to touch real quickly on that just before I continue on. I've reached out to some of Zina's family and friends, and if they're listening, just like to say hi and praying for y'all, and anything I can do to talk to you or help or whatever I can do from Atlanta, whatever I can do is what I can do. I'm gonna go ahead and dive right in with some other topics, though. I'll start off with the update on the Remnant Podcast Network. Essentially, what I'm looking at doing, why do I say always? I always say those sorts of things. I'm looking at doing this. I'm going to be trying to do this. I need to stop saying that because I am doing it. I really, really am doing it. I put up a new site for the newest podcast going up, and the final title as of this podcast, anyway, is The Many Worlds of Joshua Ling. I talked about 5 worlds, and yeah, I'm going to mostly stick within those 5 worlds, but I may tell some personal stories. I may tell, something completely out of the blue that may or may not fit in one of my other worlds. And so that's going to be whatever. That podcast format is going to be something along the lines of a quick intro. I mean, really, really quick, 30 seconds, whatever. And then diving right into the story. I'll go ahead and tell the whole scene. And each of these are going to be more so individual scenes than full stories. But most of them will have an ongoing narrative that link together and just continue the story throughout. So you're sort of getting these mini chunks of a much more broad story, almost like with a comic book kind of situation where you only get, how many issues is an actual story of a comic book, 5, 10, it just depends. So that's what we're doing for the Many Worlds of Joshua Ling. And also after the actual story, I will be having a little bit of notes and things, author notes, and that's more so just so that I can make sure anyone who doesn't understand what's going on in the story, it's just kind of my little author notes section. You can listen to it or not. My thoughts on maybe some of the symbolism that I'm trying to use, that sort of thing. But that's only if you really want to listen to it. It's not like you have to listen to it to get what I'm saying or whatever. That would be poor storytelling. But so that's what I'm planning on for the Many Worlds of Joshua Ling. Moving past that, the Remnant Podcast Network will possibly also be having a wrestling podcast where I will actually, with another host hopefully, we'll be looking at the careers of certain wrestlers and their characters and going through and kind of telling those stories. I feel like that there's not a really good gateway into pro wrestling. Obviously, you can just tune in and start watching and kind of gauge all the characters based on that. And honestly, a lot of the characters, especially today, aren't even worth. They don't seem like anyway that they're worth actually looking into and seeing their backstories and stuff. But as with anything that's an ongoing narrative, an ongoing mythology. Greek mythology, comic books, Power Rangers, I don't know, all these different kinds of things. There's only, really the only way that you can start to get someone into it is to introduce them to the characters themselves. And then things start to make a little bit more sense, and then you can get into some of the stories. So That's what I plan on doing anyway. I'll spotlight a wrestler here and there, or maybe a faction, or maybe a tag team, that sort of thing. And not so much focus on the actual events or following, current events in wrestling or anything like that. More so on the character level. Also, if anyone wants to submit a podcast for seeing if they can come on to the Remnant Podcast Network, feel free. My email is very, very public. Joshua the Christian K9, letter K number 9, at gmail.com. I'm looking for podcasts that are from Christian creatives, people who are very, very creative and happen to be Christian, hopefully. And I'm not saying the content. The content, that's something, for another topic for another time. But I really feel like saying content is, quote, Christian is very much a marketing ploy and something ridiculous to just... It can't be a Christian... content can't be Christian because only a person can be Christian. But that being said, I feel like the really quality stuff out there isn't getting a good spotlight, and in some cases isn't being made. So I'm looking for quality Christian creative stuff. Okay, on to today's topic for the Remnant Podcast number 2. I have a friend, and I'm not going to say his name specifically. A lot of you have heard me talk about him. He lives in another state from me. He is, I live in Atlanta. I won't say where he lives, but we'll just say somewhere in the northeast region of the U.S. He has been my friend since about 2006, yeah. And he is a really, really interesting cat. Let me tell you what. For the sake of this, we're going to call him by his very first username that I knew him as at a forum called Wrestling Army. And his name, a username on there was StratusFan. And Stratus being the last name of Patricia Strategius, or better known as Trish Stratus to you all in the wrestling world. Female wrestler, very entertaining, very beautiful, very interesting wrestling character, honestly. One of the better acting female wrestlers, even during that time when there were a lot more good female wrestlers, but I digress. Going back to my friend StratusFan, he came to know Christ a couple years ago. And he and I kind of helped him along with that. I'm not taking credit, of course. It's all God. But, he's gone through a lot. He's had some people very close to him pass away, and has always had, he's always been down on a lot of things. And I just, anytime that I meet people like that, I try and brighten them up, and I'm an empath in that way. I try to help other people. I try to make them happy. It's part of being an entertainer too. Growing up as a DJ in our family's mobile DJ business, and trying to what's a good song that I can play to make people happy, or what kind of interactive dance can I teach them to make these people happy. And sometimes I know that can get annoying to some people. Thankfully, though, StratusFan and we have been able to kind of tell stories together. We call it role-playing, but in some ways it's not really, especially because we don't just play the point of view of one character. It's more like story play, where we create a situation with characters and such. Sometimes they're completely original. We have one or two that I plan on kind of doing my own spun versions on the many worlds of Joshua Ling, especially in the world of kayfabe, which is my professional wrestling world. But we've done wrestling stories. We've done other stories with... I'm losing train of thought. Doctor Who stories. We've done all kinds of stuff. I got him into Doctor Who, And he was the one responsible for getting me into the Buffyverse, into Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and into Angel. I recently finished Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I finished, or I'm gonna finish Angel when I get around to it. I've seen 1 or 2 episodes, and I'm just trying to really get into it. But it has a different feel than Buffy, so I'm trying. We'll see how it goes. Also, he and I watch episodes together, so sometimes I have to wait. But anyway, so StratusFan, he and I do this story play back and forth where we play these characters, and it's really, really fun. And not only that, it really helps with my writing. Not necessarily always the spelling and stuff, or the technical aspects of writing, although it does help with that. And it does help with my typing speed and sorts of things like that. But the thing that I really love the most about our story play is when we're doing these stories, we're collaborating, working together to try to create the best story we possibly can. We're trying to surprise one another with story ideas and just try to create a story that ebbs and flows. It has those feel-good moments, but it also has those really tough drama moments. Trying to create good villains, because even to this day, I have a hard time really creating super, not just relatable, because I don't think every villain should be relatable, but trying to think of villains that really stick with you and you feel their motivation even though you don't agree with it. And those sorts of things, I get a lot of help with the pacing of stories when we do this. We do it, anytime that we have a night or whatever, we may get on for an hour or something like that and either watch something or do some story play. And so what I'm trying to say to a lot of Christian creatives and writers is, if you really, really want to get a feel for pacing and structure, it really, really helps to be thrown into a situation where you have to come up with something on the fly in little bits and pieces, not all the whole thing, all the way through. You have a person helping you on the other side. But trying to ebb and flow a story through back-to-back role plays, literally just a couple sentences, Normally it's this character does this action and says or says this and waits for a reaction. And it's this give and take that he and I do, and we do this through Instant Messenger. Obviously, we're still on AOL Instant Messenger. We really got to get to Skype soon, or Google Hangouts, or something, because it's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, it works, I guess. But yeah, I really, really love doing that with people. And I think that's something that I'm going to be able to do with the Many Worlds of Joshua Ling, is I'll hopefully be able to take some of these stories and write out these scenes, write out these, and they're not going to be as short as the role plays. I'm not saying I'm going to have a podcast with a couple sentences, but they are going to be somewhat short. They're going to be around 750 words a piece, with writing-wise. How long they'll be, I'm guessing around 5-10 minutes each. I'm shooting more for 10, 15, hopefully. And if I have to, kind of up some of those, I will. But I like the idea, and I always have enjoyed stories that are serial in nature. They connect to each other. They reward the reader or listener or whatever, watcher with viewer. They reward them with when they remember things. They give the reader, watcher, whatever, a sense of I don't want to say living in the world, but it's almost as if these people who are the characters almost become friends of yours. And that's a very powerful thing, because the more you're with a person, the more it helps shape your views of the world and kind of change the way you think about stuff. Um, and not to say that you need to be completely pliable and believe everything a person says, but you also start to see characters' flaws, and you see, well, I don't agree with them on that. I don't agree with these sorts of things and the conclusions that they're coming to, and I wish that these characters wouldn't, because who doesn't have those friends that you don't agree with all their uh, ideals and things like that? I have plenty that are, even in my church, but also some other friends and things that I've gone to church with as a kid, and they've fallen off. They've not stuck with the faith, and you know, my point being is that characters are powerful, and when you can have a world where these characters live and breathe and just do things that that are amazing. These go on adventures and live everyday life. Sometimes everyday life is an adventure. And when you have characters that do that kind of a thing, you really do start to identify with them. You see the things that they go through, and the story play, the role playing has been a fantastic outlet for me to say, this is what I feel and what I see, but not always from Joshua Ling's point of view. It's a little different. I can create a character. Say, I'll go ahead and bring up our first story that we did long term. I'm talking, we kept this specific story going for probably 2 years. And that's almost every day back when I was 16, 17 years old. And this story involved a wrestler by the name of Joshua Slater. Yes, he's based off me, but he's a little bit different in many ways. He's actually very different in many ways. But basically, he's just your everyday, run-of-the-mill babyface wrestler. Babyface meaning good guy, for those of you who don't speak wrestling. He is very, very... The one thing that's different about him is he is considerably young for a wrestler. And in this world, wrestling is real. It's not fake, okay? So I just wanted to throw that out there right now. He's about 20 years old. He's very, very good at wrestling. Very powerful. Short, stocky-ish build, but still fairly cut. And he's very much a scrappy wrestler, meaning he takes the opportunities that are given to him and he runs with them. And so through this story, the first round of it, StratusFan was playing Trish Stratus. Go figure, right? And so what StratusFan would do is he would... Oh, forget it. I probably already said his name once or twice in this podcast, and I really don't feel like editing it. His first name is Chris. I will not give out any more information about him, however, because he is paranoid about stuff. And if he heard all this, he might get all weird and stuff, so we'll see if he hears the episode. I don't know, but any which way. So Chris and I, we'd role play this, and the story went something along the lines of... Trish kind of, sort of, was interested in him just because he's a good wrestler and stuff, and he's young, kind of like a veteran taking the rookie under her wing and stuff like that. And they had some other vested interest as far as the way the wrestling company was going, and it turned out that they had a lot in common and a lot that they could learn from each other that they didn't have in common. And the two began a friendship. That friendship blossomed into a romance eventually, and it was a very interesting story with some very, very cool... I don't want to spoil it all, because I am telling a retelling of this story with someone other than Trish Stratus as that female character, but It reminds me a lot of Rocky, of facing the giants, of a lot of different things. And in a sports world, there's a lot that is to be accomplished. There's a lot that you want to accomplish as an athlete, as a person. There's physical limits that you got to push and get past, and that's generally a very, very beautiful metaphor and a very strong symbol for what's going on in your heart and in your mind and those obstacles that God is helping you overcome. And this story will be in the world of kayfabe. It will be the first story that I will be telling in the world of kayfabe. I'm not sure when I'll get to that to start. But yeah, so I wanted to suggest to anybody who is a writer, or even if you're not a writer, if you're just a story person in general, even if you don't want to actually do anything with your stories, even if you just want to have fun, go find a partner who you can sit down with, who you can write stuff out, who you can come up with these plots and characters, and feel free to take from whatever you want. If you want to do a blatant, I'm going to be Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender, or, whatever, the Doctor from Doctor Who, come up with a story. Come up with something. It doesn't matter what it is or where it is, or just have fun. Write what you love with a friend. And you're going to learn stuff about that friend that you never knew. You're going to find stuff about each other's personality and delve into their psyche in ways that you never thought of. And it really, really brings friends close together. I am very, very close with Chris. He's my brother. He's a great guy, and we have had so many great stories, and he knows so much about me just through those stories, and I know so much about him just through those stories. And I definitely recommend it to anyone who is interested, especially in making stories. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up right there, just right in between 20 and 25 minutes, and I've rambled on long enough. But as far as schedules for these, I'm not going to really nail down a schedule unless I get to the point where I'm not consistently putting it out. Then I may have to input a schedule. I know it's kind of annoying for a listener. You like to know when it's going to show up and when it's going to be live and stuff. But, maybe I'll integrate it in the future. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I just like to be able to ebb and flow with my own work schedule and my own personal schedule. And, I'm such a A-type go-getter with this sort of thing that I honestly don't feel like I need a schedule to stay consistent and to stay putting stuff out. So we'll see how it goes. But that's going to do it for now. And until next time, stay frosty, I guess. A woo? Yes, a woo.